and welcome to another edition of SolarPV TV News Weekly powered by PV Magazine. Coming up in this week's edition. In addition to our regular news coverage, this week SolarPV TV brings you special coverage of the Global Green Gorgeous and Green Gala from San Francisco. As our top story, GTAT Advanced Technologies has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. In market and policy updates, solar investment rises across the board during the third quarter. IHS and Solarbuzz release PV market forecasts for 2014. Cañete is confirmed as EU Commissioner for Climate and Energy. Japanese utilities begin restricting grid access for solar PV. And the new report predicts that solar will become competitive with fossil fuels in Europe within the next decade. Business headlines. GCL will build an additional 661 megawatts of new solar PV in China. KKR acquires a one-third stake in Acciona's renewable generation business. NextEra announces a follow-on offering to support solar project acquisition in the United Kingdom. Revenues at leading Taiwanese PV makers rebound in September, and LDK has begun shipments under 60.5 megawatt module deal with a Chinese EPC contractor. Technology news. Panasonic will invest tens of billions of yen in Tesla's Gigafactory. The Israeli government has announced an award for solar fuel production, and Ohio State University has developed a hybrid PV cell with energy storage. Starting with top story. In a surprise move, solar polysilicon and LED equipment maker GTAT Advanced Technologies filed for bankruptcy on October 6th. The filing follows news that Apple will not use GT Sapphire screens for the iPhone 6, but the company's sales have also suffered under the severe 3-year downturn in the PV equipment industry. Under the Chapter 11 filing, GT will be allowed to restructure and says it plans to continue business as usual while developing a reorganization plan. However, it will also close Sapphire production facilities in Arizona and Massachusetts. In market and policy updates. Solar investments rose across the board during the third quarter of 2014, according to Mercom Capital's latest report on funding and M&A activity in the solar industry. The report also shows that downstream companies and activities continue to be the main recipients of funding, and Chinese banks continue to make more capital available to the industry than all other sources combined. Last week, IHS and NPD Solarbuzz released solar market forecasts for 2014, with both companies predicting a spike in installations during the fourth quarter. NPD Solarbuzz is more optimistic than IHS, predicting that 19.5 gigawatts of new PV in the fourth quarter will drive the year's total market volume to above 50 gigawatts, while IHS revised its forecast downward to 45 gigawatts for the full year. Miguel Arias Cañete of Spain's Popular Party has been confirmed as the EU's new Commissioner for Climate and Energy through a deal between center-left and center-right parties. The commissioner faced a difficult confirmation hearing, during which he dodged questions about his ties to oil companies and provided vague answers about future policies. More than 500,000 people had signed a petition calling for the European Parliament to reject Cañete. 5 of Japan's largest utilities have begun restricting grid access for new PV systems, citing difficulty integrating increasingly high penetrations of solar PV. Japan's Renewable Energy Foundation has claimed that such actions are unreasonable, and Japan's Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry has formed a working group to investigate these problems. Additionally, utility Tokyo Electric Power Company has begun building a 100-kilometer transmission line in central Japan to accommodate more renewable energy. Energy consultants at the Puru firm predicted that solar will be competitive on price with fossil fuel generation in Europe during the next decade, which it says will remove the need for subsidies. The report also predicts that PV will achieve such price parity before land-based wind in many areas. The company estimates that an additional 220 gigawatts of solar PV capacity can be added in Europe alone once parity has been reached. This week, Solar PV TV brings you special coverage of Global Green's Gorgeous and Green Gala in San Francisco, where we spoke with celebrities and environmentalists about the importance of solar in the green movement. If you could get your message across to global leaders around the world, what would be your message to motivate them to go green?
Well, I think the big message right now clearly is climate change. And I think there's no denying that climate change is having a dramatic impact, not just in the United States, but around the world. If you look at the number of coastal cities right now that are at or below sea level that have been impacted, Katrina in New Orleans, Sandy on the East Coast, in Asia, typhoons, it's a real wake-up call to the fact that we have to adjust to the fact of a dramatically changing weather system, due in large part to what we've done to our own environment.
There's a sense of feeling that there's a futility because, this is the planet. This is the way things go. Therefore, you have no control. Well, the truth of the matter is we do have control, and we are able to make a difference, even if it's a small difference. We don't have to weigh it as changing the world this way, but each little piece of what we do will make a difference to everyone and to the globe. We got one Earth.
I think one big step would just be converting over to solar power. Fossil fuels, it's a thing of the past. This is a new time, and we can take energy from the sun, a natural resource, and use it and just not interrupt our planet. And I think that if we can do that, that's one step towards a much healthier planet.
What role do you think solar will play in the future energy mix?
It's a huge part of the energy mix. There's finally grid parity, which I'm really excited about. I love seeing companies like NRG leading the way and saying it's really important to have solar as one of these huge energy mixes, and we need to start seeing distributed energy internationally. We're already seeing countries like Denmark and Iceland looking all different types of energy inputs, and I think it's really important to address a cocktail because there's not one silver bullet solution, but I think that PV is probably going to play the largest role long term.
I actually now have friends who are running their houses purely on solar energy, and a couple of years ago you wouldn't have ever expected that. It's something you associate with, a company, a very forward-thinking company. Now it's available just for regular people, so definitely going to be huge.
I think that solar will play a huge part because I think that the technology will continue to grow, the price will come down, and it makes sense. Harness the energy of the sun. I think that it's going to play a huge part, and it could be the thing that saves the whole deal.
Business headlines. GCL New Energy has announced plans to develop an additional 661 megawatts of solar PV projects in China. GCL plans to build a 500 megawatt PV project in Hubei province through a partnership and has increased its stake in a company that is building 161 megawatts of PV in Inner Mongolia. Private equity firm KKR has moved deeper into renewable energy by acquiring a one-third stake in the renewable energy generation business of Acciona for 397 million euros. The two companies plan to launch a yield co to hold some of these assets, which are mostly wind but include solar PV and CSP plants. NextEra Energy has announced a follow-on public offering in November for its NextEra Solar Fund, or NSF. Through this offering, NextEra plans to bring NSF to $340 million, which will support acquisition of up to 186 megawatts of solar PV in the UK before a policy deadline. Taiwanese PV makers Neo Solar Power and Motec both saw revenues rebound in September after 3 months of decline following the U.S. preliminary anti-dumping ruling against Chinese and Taiwanese PV. NSP's revenues rose 5% during the month to $65 million, and Motec's revenues grew 40% to $51 million. LDK Solar has begun making shipments under a 60-megawatt PV module supply deal with Chinese EPC contractor. LDK is currently undergoing restructuring, and 3 of the company's U.S. subsidiaries filed for bankruptcy in September. Technology news. Panasonic has announced that it will invest tens of billions of yen in the new gigafactory for lithium-ion batteries in the U.S. state of Nevada, which it is building with electric vehicle maker Tesla. Panasonic plans to establish a new subsidiary for manufacturing at the plant and occupy 500,000 square meters of the factory. A Swiss-American research duo has been chosen as the winner of $500,000 from the Israeli government for their work to develop technology that uses solar to create fuel. Thomas Meyer and Michael Grutzel will accept the Sheila Sampson Prize on December 5th for their work to use solar-generated electricity to split water into hydrogen and oxygen. Scientists at Ohio State University have developed a hybrid device which combines a PV cell with a rechargeable battery as part of the research funded by the U.S. Department of Energy. The new device features a mesh PV module which allows air into the battery and integrates a process for the transfer of electrons from the module to the battery electrode. That's all for today. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to meeting you next week at Solar Power International in Las Vegas.